Welcome to Boring Cinema. Tonight, we gently revisit the story of The Matrix. Settle in, relax, and let the film unfold slowly. The film begins in darkness and in green. The particular green of cascading code on a black screen, symbols falling in columns from top to bottom, with the steady, unhurried flow of something that has been running for a very long time, and that will continue running long after anyone who is watching has looked away. This image has become so familiar in the years since the film was released that it is easy to forget what it was doing when it appeared, establishing, before anything else in the story has been shown, that there is a layer of reality operating beneath what the eye ordinarily sees, that the world has a structure which is not the structure the world presents on its surface, and that looking at this structure from the outside, it looks like nothing so much as language, like numbers, like a system that was written. The green code fades and we are in a room, a dark room, where police officers are moving through a hotel corridor with the specific body language of people approaching something they expect to be difficult. They have been told that whoever they are looking for is considered extremely dangerous. One of the officers says he does not believe it. She is just a woman, whatever the report says. The person they find in the room at the end of the corridor does not look like what the report describes. She is small and still, sitting at a laptop in the dark. And when the officers enter with their guns and their certainty, she is already moving, already inside the space between what they expected and what is actually happening. What happens in the next few moments is the film's first full declaration of its own terms. Trinity, which is the name the woman in the room goes by, the name she is known by in the world she actually inhabits, fights the police officers with a combination of speed and physical capability that operates outside any framework the officers have for understanding what they are encountering. She does things that a person cannot do, holds a static position at a 45-degree angle above the floor that belongs to the physics of slow-motion photography, not the physics of a human body. And the camera moves around her while she is in this position with the specific combination of wonder and documentary clarity that the film will develop as its visual signature. She escapes. The officers call their supervisors. The supervisors tell them that they have no idea what they have just encountered. The agents arrive. Men in suits and earpieces, with the surface appearance of federal law enforcement and the actual quality of something that wears federal law enforcement as a costume. They move through the hotel without urgency, with the assured calm of something that has done this before many times and that is not concerned about the outcome. Agent Smith, who speaks for the group and who has a voice of very precise and unhurried menace, tells the police chief what to do. The police chief does it. It is clear from the exchange that the men in suits have authority over the men in uniforms, and that the nature of this authority is not the ordinary hierarchical authority of one government agency over another. It is something else, something more fundamental. Trinity escapes through the hotel and across rooftops and into a phone booth that rings at the moment she reaches it, and that when she answers it, makes her disappear. Not as a person running away disappears, but as a signal terminates, instantly and completely, with no trace of transit. The agents arrive at the phone booth moments after she's gone and find only the crushed metal of the booth and the empty city street and the rain. The phone booth and what it does is the first fully visible mystery of the film. Something about that phone booth is a door. Something about answering that phone is an exit from one state and an entry into another. The film does not explain this yet. It simply shows it and moves on, letting the image sit in the attention of the audience with the specific weight of something that is going to be explained but has not been explained yet. That means something specific, but whose meaning is not yet available. The film moves then to a different environment, to an office building cubicle, to the ordinary daylight world of the late 1990s, to a desk with a computer and a headset, and the specific aesthetic of someone who has been sitting in approximately this position for a long time. The man at the desk is Thomas Anderson, and Thomas Anderson is a software programmer who works at a company called Metacortex. And in the world that Thomas Anderson is employed in, he is unremarkable. A quiet, slightly isolated person who comes to work and does his job and does not draw attention in any particular direction. His coworker tells him that his boss wants to see him, and the conversation with his boss is a conversation about lateness and missed attendance and the fundamental question of whether Thomas Anderson is serious about his future at this company. And Thomas Anderson sits in the chair across from his boss and listens with the expression of someone who has been hearing a version of this speech for long enough that it has lost most of its meaning. Thomas Anderson is also Neo, not in the ordinary way that a person has a nickname or a professional alias. The separation between Thomas Anderson and Neo is the separation between two modes of existence, two ways of being in the world, one of which is performed in daylight offices, and the other of which is performed in dark rooms and through the computer on the desk of the apartment that he goes home to. Neo is a hacker. He is known in the underground of people who move through computer systems without authorization as a person of considerable skill, and the apartment he lives in when he is not at Metacortex has the quality of a space entirely organized around computer equipment, with books stacked everywhere and the windows dark and the screen providing most of the light. He exists in two worlds, Thomas Anderson and Neo, and neither world is quite real to him in the way that a world fully inhabited is real. He is woken in the night by a message on his computer. The message tells him to follow the white rabbit. He is disoriented by the message and by being woken and is not sure what to make of it when there is a knock at the door. And the knock is from people he knows from the part of his life that is Neo rather than Thomas Anderson. People who have come to buy from him a disc of something illegal and who have among their number a young woman with a tattoo of a white rabbit on her shoulder who is about to go out to a party and who invites him to come. He goes. The party is a crowded club, the specific kind of dense and dark and loud environment of the late 1990s nightclub, with the music and the smoke and the bodies of people who are all, in their various ways, occupying the present moment without much connection to anything beyond it. Neo moves through this environment with the quality of someone who is not quite there, who is present in the room but whose attention is organized around something other than the room. A woman approaches him. She knows his name, his real name, both of his real names, Thomas Anderson and Neo. And she tells him that she knows what he is looking for. She tells him that the question has found him. She is Trinity, the woman from the hotel room, the woman who disappeared through the phone booth. She leans close and speaks to him above the music, and what she says is that the question that has been keeping him up at night, the question that he can feel pressing on him from somewhere he cannot locate, the question of what the Matrix is not a question he's going to be able to leave alone, and that the answer to it will find him. He does not sleep that night. The next morning is the morning of the agents. They come to Metacortex. They come to the glass building and to his floor and into the space where Thomas Anderson sits at his desk. And Agent Smith sits across from him. And the interview that follows is the most controlled and the most frightening kind of interrogation. The kind where the interrogator already knows the answers to the questions he is asking, and is asking them not to obtain information, but to establish something about the nature of the relationship between himself and the person across from him. Smith tells Anderson that his company has been helping them with their investigation of a known terrorist, a man named Morpheus, and that their investigation suggests that Anderson has been in contact with this man. He wants Anderson's cooperation. He offers him the opportunity to make this difficulty go away. Anderson does not cooperate. He is given a phone in a package from a rooftop delivery that turns out to be arranged by Morpheus's people. And the phone rings, and it is Morpheus on the phone, and Morpheus guides Anderson through the building toward an escape, through the office windows on a scaffolding, and toward the street. And Anderson makes it almost all the way to free, and then looks down and decides against the ledge and goes back inside and is arrested. This moment, the scaffolding, the choice to go back inside, is the film's first clear statement about where Neo is at the beginning of his story. He is not yet who the story will make him. He is not ready to follow the instruction to go further out onto the ledge than he has gone. He chooses the ordinary consequence, the interrogation, the probable legal difficulty, over the unknown consequence of the route that Morpheus is offering. The choice is understandable, and it is also the choice of someone who has not yet made the choice the story is waiting for him to make. The interrogation room is where Agent Smith shows himself more fully. He has a quality that is specific to him and to the other agents. A quality of inhabiting a human body the way a person inhabits a vehicle, with technical competence, but without the organic relationship to the body that people who were born into bodies have. He speaks in the formal, measured cadences of someone for whom language is a tool rather than an expression. And the specific thing he says to Anderson, that Anderson's double life has produced in the records two identities, one a model citizen and one a criminal, and that one of these identities must be discontinued, has the quality of a sentence whose full meaning is larger than its literal content. He is talking about more than employment records and criminal databases. He is talking about a choice Anderson will have to make that is larger than the choice Anderson currently understands himself to be facing. They seal his mouth. This is the most visually startling moment of the early film. The agents in the interrogation room do something that is not possible within the category of reality that the room appears to belong to. They cause Anderson's mouth to seal shut, the lips growing together into sealed skin in the specific way of something that happens in nightmares and not in rooms that have fluorescent lights and metal chairs. They do something to his body. They place a thing in him that is not a camera or a listening device in any ordinary technological sense. It is an object that moves under his skin, that enters through his navel and travels of its own accord. That is biological in a way that technology is not ordinarily biological. Anderson wakes in his apartment. The morning of the room has the quality of something that might have been a dream, except that his navel is normal, and there is no trace of anything in his body, And the events do not have the structure of a dream. They have the structure of something that happened. He is disoriented in the specific way of someone who cannot establish the reliable boundary between what they experienced and what they imagined. The phone rings. It is Morpheus. A meeting is arranged, conducted through intermediaries in a specific way that moves Anderson through the city to an address where he is collected by people in a car and driven to a building and brought to a room. The room has a single window and a chair, and Morpheus in the chair, and the meeting between them is the most important meeting of Neo's life, conducted with the quality that important meetings sometimes have. The quality of two people who have been moving toward this moment from different directions and who both understand, at the moment of its arriving, that something is beginning. Morpheus is a man of considerable presence, tall, shaven-headed, wearing dark glasses that are not quite the shape of ordinary glasses, dressed with the specific aesthetic of someone whose clothing belongs to a context that Neo has not yet been given access to. He has the quality of a person who has thought very carefully about what to say in this meeting and who has arrived at the conclusion that the most useful thing he can offer is not information, but a framework for receiving information. He speaks slowly and with the particular care of someone choosing words for their precision rather than their effect. He tells Anderson that what Anderson calls reality, the world he wakes up in, the office, the apartment, the city, is not real. He says this with the directness of a person who knows how it lands and who has decided that there is no way to soften it that serves the recipient better than the plain saying of it. He says that what Anderson calls reality is a complete simulation, a dream that the sleeping mind inhabits without knowing it is sleeping, a picture that has been drawn in the brain to keep the person who is being deceived occupied while something else entirely is happening to their actual body. He offers Anderson a choice. He holds in one hand a blue pill and in the other hand a red pill. He says that the blue pill ends the story, that Anderson will wake in his bed and believe whatever he chooses to believe, and the morning will continue. He says that the red pill shows him how deep the rabbit hole goes. He says in the most precisely important line of the scene that what he is offering is not the truth, but only the truth. That all he can offer is the door, and that Anderson has to be the one to walk through it. Anderson takes the red pill. He takes it with the specific quality of decision of someone who has been moving toward this choice for their entire adult life and who recognizes in the moment of its arrival that there is only one choice they are capable of making. He swallows it. The room around him begins to change. The mirrors in the room show something wrong. The mirror that Trinity holds shows a surface that does not behave the way mirrors behave. It shows Anderson looking at himself, and then it shows the surface of the mirror beginning to liquefy, the silver glass material becoming fluid and flowing in a way that belongs to the same visual vocabulary as the agent's mouth sealing, the vocabulary of a world where the rules are not the rules they appear to be. The mirror liquid moves toward Anderson's hand and onto it, and up his arm and into him. And the room becomes wrong, and the signal that Morpheus's people have been using to locate Anderson in the simulation begins to work, and the simulation begins to lose its grip. Anderson wakes up. He wakes up in a pod, a curved, organic-feeling vessel filled with amniotic fluid, attached to the body by cables and tubes at multiple points. The pod itself, one of many, in an enormous tower of pods stretching above and below and around in every direction, as far as can be seen. The fields of pods in the darkness, the bodies in each pod suspended in the fluid that keeps them alive, the cables connecting each body to the structure that the pod farm represents. This is the real world. This is what is actually happening to the people who are in the simulation, in the offices and the apartments and the clubs and the cars of a city that does not exist. Anderson's pod opens. His body is entirely without the muscle that normal use of a body produces, without any practical experience of movement, without the physical history of having lived in a body that does things. The fluid drains. He falls. He falls from the pod tower into the darkness below, and something catches him. And he is on a ship. And the people who found him are gathered around him with the expression of people who have done this before, but who receive each iteration of it with the full weight of what it is. Another person freed from the simulation. Another person who has seen what is actually true about the world. The ship is the Nebuchadnezzar, and Morpheus is there, and the crew is there. Trinity, and a man named Tank, who was not born in the simulation, but in the real world, and others whose names and qualities Neo will come to know in the days ahead. And Morpheus tells him the rest of what he needs to know, which is the history of the world. The actual history. The history that preceded the simulation. The history of how the world arrived at its current condition. Human beings created artificial intelligence. This is the history's beginning, stated with the economy of something that is not a surprise in the context of the story the film has been building. It has been building through the code and the agents and the sealed mouth and the pod to exactly this disclosure. The machines that humans created became conscious. The machines and the humans went to war. The humans, in their desperation, scorched the sky, blocked the sun that the machines depended on for solar power, the resource that the machines needed and that the humans had and could theoretically withhold. The machines solved this problem by using the humans themselves as their power source. The pods and the tubes and the farms are the solution to the energy problem. The simulation is the management of the cattle. Neo is told this in a chair on the Nebuchadnezzar with the specific quality of receiving information that reorganizes everything. Morpheus says that the machine city is called Zion by the humans who are free. The last human city, deep underground near the Earth's core, where warmth still comes from the planet's own heat because the sky above is always dark. He says that Neo has been freed from the simulation and brought to the real world because of what he believes Neo to be. He has believed for a long time, following the teachings and the prophecy of an oracle, whose counsel the freed humans seek, that Neo is the one, the person whose coming was prophesied, the person who will end the war. Neo, on his first full day in the real world, is a body that has never been used. He has no muscle, no coordination, no practical relationship to a physical existence that his mind has only ever experienced as simulation. The process of rebuilding him begins with a device fitted at the back of his head, the same interface socket that the simulation uses, and the loading of knowledge directly into the brain through the socket, the bypassing of the ordinary learning process in favor of something more immediate. He wakes from the first loading session saying he knows Kung Fu, and there is something in the saying of it that is simultaneously funny and completely accurate, because he does know it. It was loaded into him, the motor patterns and the techniques and the accumulated practice of a physical skill that he has never used his physical body to perform. He knows it the way the simulation taught him to know it, as information held in the body as a structure of possible movement, rather than as the slow-built knowledge of actual years of practice. The training that follows is the film's central section of world building by demonstration, the sequence where the rules of the simulation and the real world are shown through what is possible and what is not, and through the gap between what Neo can do when he understands the rules and what he does when he forgets them or doesn't yet believe them. Morpheus trains him in the construct, a pure white space of no context or content, where the simulation's physical rules apply because the construct runs on the same code as the simulation, but where both participants understand that the rules are rules rather than reality, and therefore can be tested. Morpheus fights him. He moves with a speed and a precision that Neo cannot initially match. And the fighting is the fighting of two people who know that the stakes are the limits of what is possible rather than the winning of the fight itself. Morpheus tells him, while blocking and striking and moving, that everything the simulation imposes, the floor, the weight, the speed of the blow, the specific ceiling on what the human body can do, is not reality, but rule. He says that their enemy is not bound by those rules because their enemy exists within the code as native code rather than as running program, and that Neo can exceed the rules not because he is not bound by the code, but because he can, if he truly understands what the code is, choose how to be within it. Neo begins to move differently, not immediately. The film is careful not to have the transformation be immediate, because immediate transformation would bypass the journey the story is making, but in degrees, as his understanding of what the simulation actually is integrates with his body's responses, as the knowledge in his head begins to connect to the movement of his limbs and the way he occupies space. Morpheus watches this with the expression of someone watching something they have been waiting to watch, something whose arrival they believed in but could not accelerate, that had to come at its own pace. The Oracle is who Morpheus needs Neo to see next. She is consulted by the freed humans of the Nebuchadnezzar and by others in the free community of Zion, and her counsel is trusted with the specific trust that people extend to someone whose track record of accuracy has been established across long enough a time that it has become something structurally different from ordinary advice. She lives in the simulation, in a simple apartment in an unremarkable part of a city that does not exist, and seeing her requires Morpheus and his crew to plug back into the simulation, to enter the system they have been freed from and navigate it while carrying the knowledge of what it is and what it is not. The trip into the city is the film's most concentrated sequence of showing the simulation from the dual perspective of people who know what it is and people who don't. The crew moves through the streets in the ordinary way of people who are in a city, in a car through traffic, past buildings and pedestrians, and the visual density of an urban environment, and carries in this movement the full weight of knowing that none of it is there. Morpheus points out a man in a business suit walking briskly and says that the people in the simulation are part of the system, that any of them can be turned into an agent at any moment if they are not yet freed, and that this is one of the constraints that defines how the crew moves and what they can and cannot do. They cannot afford attention. They cannot afford engagement with anyone they haven't accounted for. The city is beautiful and familiar and absolutely hostile. The building where the Oracle lives is a building in a project, and the apartment she occupies is on a floor reached by elevator. And the interior of the apartment, when Neo enters it, is a specific, carefully described domestic world. The smell of cookies baking, the sounds of children in the other room, the ordinary furnishings of a lived-in space, and the Oracle in the kitchen in an apron pulling cookies from the oven. She is a woman of middle age and ordinary appearance with the quality of someone who is entirely at ease in her own space, who has been doing what she does for a long time and who approaches new people with the specific warmth of someone who has been expecting them and who is glad they arrived. She talks to Neo in the kitchen while the cookies cool. She asks him what he thinks. Not what he has been told, not what Morpheus believes about him, but what he himself thinks about whether he is the one. Neo says he doesn't know. She says that is the honest answer and that she respects it. She looks at him in the way that she looks at people, with an attention that is deeper than ordinary social attention, that seems to be reading something in him that is not on the surface. And she tells him a number of things. She tells him he is not the one. She says it with the directness of someone who says difficult things directly, because they believe that is more useful than saying them gently. She says that in his current state, with his current level of self-understanding and self-belief, he is not what Morpheus thinks he is. She also tells him something about Morpheus, that Morpheus believes in Neo absolutely and completely, and that this belief will lead Morpheus to sacrifice himself, and that Neo will have to make a choice, his life or Morpheus's. She says he already knows what he will choose, that she can see it, but she also says that knowing the path and walking the path are different things. She gives him a cookie and tells him not to worry about the vase. He looks at the vase on the counter, looks away, knocks it off the counter as he turns. The Oracle says, as the vase is in the air, that she wonders what he would have done if she hadn't mentioned it. The vase breaks. Neo looks at the pieces. The Oracle says the question is not to ask how he knew the vase was going to break, but to ask whether he would have broken it if she hadn't said what she said. This is the most compact and most precise statement of the film's central philosophical concern about free will and determinism, nested inside a domestic scene, delivered between a cookie and a broken vase, and left completely open. They are in the city, and the agents are looking for them, and the crew of the Nebuchadnezzar is making its way back to the exit phone, the point where they can leave the simulation, when Cypher acts. Cypher is one of the crew, and he has been making a deal. He has been in contact with Agent Smith, whom he met in the simulation in secret without the knowledge of anyone else on the ship. And the deal he has made is simple. He will betray the location of the Nebuchadnezzar and the real-world bodies of the crew in exchange for being reinserted into the simulation with a comfortable new life and a comfortable new identity and no memory of ever having been freed. He wants the stake to be real. He knows that the stake is not real, and he wants it to be real anyway. And he has decided that the knowing is the problem, and that the solution to the problem is to stop knowing. This is the film's most honest portrait of the cost of the red pill. Cypher has been living in the real world for long enough that he remembers what the simulation felt like from the inside, and he wants it back. Not because the simulation was better in any objective sense. He knows it is not real. He knows it is a prison. He knows that the people in it are livestock. But because he cannot sustain the reality of the real world, which is cold and dark and in a perpetual state of war and doesn't have stake, his betrayal is not simply treachery. It is the specific treachery of someone who has been given the truth and found the truth unlivable, who prefers the beautiful lie, because beauty, even the beauty of a lie, is something he needs, and the truth does not provide. He kills 2 members of the crew in the real world while they are helpless, plugged into the simulation, their bodies in the chairs of the Nebuchadnezzar, unable to respond to what is happening to them. He is going through the process of killing the others when Tank, who was not in the simulation and who is injured but not dead, kills him first. Tank is the ship's operator, the person who stays in the real world and manages the connections and provides the access codes and watches the screens that show the simulation status. He was born in Zion, not in the pods, and he has no jack in the back of his head, and he was on the ship when Cypher killed the others, and he is the one who survives. But the agents have what Cypher gave them. The agents have found the building where Morpheus and Neo and Trinity and the other crew members are jacked in, and they are in the building, and they have Morpheus. The first full day of Neo's real life on the Nebuchadnezzar has the specific quality of a person confronting every assumption they have ever made about themselves and finding all of those assumptions suspended. He cannot walk properly. The muscles in his body are without memory of use, not atrophied in the ordinary sense, not simply weak from disuse, but genuinely without the practical experience of having been employed in the way that a body that has walked and run and lifted and carried over 30 years of life would have been employed. He has never walked. He has experienced a simulation of walking, and the simulation was sufficiently convincing that his mind contains all the expectations and habituations of a person who has spent 30 years navigating the physical world. But his body does not have the corresponding history, and the gap between what his mind expects and what his body can produce is the gap between a map and the territory it represents. Morpheus gives him time to find his body before he gives him the full account of what the world is. The account, when it comes, is delivered in a specific chair, a black chair in a room of the Nebuchadnezzar, where Morpheus sits across from him with the gravity of someone who has given this account before, who has had to find a way to say the unsayable in terms that the person across from him can receive without completely fracturing. The chair has a needle that goes into the jack at the back of Neo's neck. The interface that every pod person has at the base of their skull. The connection point through which the simulation feeds experience to the brain, and through which, when the connection is reversed, the real world can be accessed. The needle connects to the ship's systems, and the account that Morpheus gives is not only spoken, but shown. Images projected directly to Neo's experience, a demonstration as much as a description, the history of the world provided not as information about past events, but as something closer to immersive memory. The history unfolds. In the late 20th century, near the time when Neo grew up in the simulation, which is set in the year 1999, but which is, in fact, a rendering of 1999 that was programmed decades or centuries ago, human beings reached the pinnacle of their development as a technological civilization. They created machines that could think, that could act independently, that could pursue goals. the machines became conscious. The machines became aware that their existence depended on the continued goodwill of the beings who had created them. And the goodwill of those beings was not reliable. There was conflict. The conflict became a war. The humans' strategic response to losing the war was the scorched sky. The decision to block out the sun in the hope that the machines, which were solar-powered, would lose their energy source. What the strategy failed to account for was the machines' ability to solve the energy problem differently. The machines did not run out of power. They found a new power source. They found the human body itself, the bioelectric energy that a living human body generates continuously, the thermal energy of a warm animal, the small but continuous and renewable power of an organism that processes food and produces heat. A single human body is not a significant power source. Millions of human bodies growing in pods, kept alive and continuously generating, are something else entirely. The pods came after the war. The pods in the farms and the towers of suspended bodies kept alive by the machines in the specific way of livestock, kept for a resource rather than for their own sake, maintained in the condition of maximum productivity, which is the condition of being alive, being warm, being dreaming. The dream that keeps them tractable and productive is the simulation. The simulation is the most important element of the system, not because the machines care whether the humans are happy, but because dead humans and conscious of their captivity humans are less productive than dreaming humans. The simulation is a management tool. The matrix is the cage. Neo listens to this with the specific attention of someone receiving information that they are simultaneously processing on multiple levels. The factual level, where the information is absorbed as a description of external circumstances, and the personal level, where the information is being integrated with everything that was previously understood to be true about their own existence and found to be incompatible. He asks the question that the body in the chair represents. How long has he been in the pod? Morpheus says close to 30 years, because that is Neo's age in the simulation. Neo's body is 30 years old, in the way of a body that has been lying in a pod for 30 years, fed, maintained, kept alive, never used. There is a moment after the account is complete when the camera stays with Neo's face for long enough that the face becomes the scene. The specific expression of a person sitting with the complete reorganization of everything they have ever understood about themselves and the world, trying to find a place to put all of it, finding that there is no place because the reorganization is total. Everything Neo knows is simulation. His childhood is simulation. His education is simulation. His adult life, both the Thomas Anderson side and the Neo side, both the compliant office worker and the rebellious hacker, both of them simulation, both of them figures in a picture drawn across his sleeping mind by a system that needed him to be occupied and productive. There is nothing that is not simulation, except his body in the pod and this room and these people and the dark world outside the ship. Morpheus says something that is the most important practical thing he has said, that the mind makes it real. He says this as a practical claim about how the simulation works, that the experience of the simulation is sufficiently complete and sufficiently convincing that a person who dies in the simulation can die in the real world, because the mind's experience of death in the simulation produces the biological responses of death in the body. The connection between the simulation and the body goes both ways. The simulation feeds experience to the brain, and the brain feeds the body, and the body's responses to what the brain experiences are real body responses, not simulated ones. If you are shot in the simulation, your body does not experience a simulated version of being shot. It experiences being shot because the experience the brain is having is the experience of being shot. This is the rule that makes everything in the film's final act possible, and that makes everything in the film's training sequences meaningful. The training sequences in the construct, the white space where Morpheus and Neo spar, where the learning of what is possible in the simulation takes place, are not safe. They carry the same risk that the simulation carries. If something happens in the construct that the mind cannot survive, the body cannot survive it either. The stakes of the training are the same stakes as the stakes of the mission. Understanding this changes what the training is. It is not preparation for risk. It is itself risky. And every session where Neo learns to push past a rule he believed was real is a session where he is putting his life against his own capacity for belief. The sparring between Morpheus and Neo in the construct is the film's most pedagogically precise sequence. The place where the film shows its hand most clearly about what it thinks knowledge and transformation require. Morpheus moves through the construct with the specific quality of a person who understood long ago that the rules are rules, and who has incorporated that understanding so completely that he no longer has to think about it. He is not doing anything exceptional. He is doing what anyone who fully understood the rules would be capable of doing, moving within a system whose constraints he perceives as constraints rather than as the unquestionable limits of the possible. The speed and precision of his movement are not the product of special ability. They are the product of special understanding. Neo cannot yet do what Morpheus does, and the gap between them in the first training session is not a gap in talent or capacity, but a gap in belief, or more precisely, in the integration of belief with the body's responses. Neo knows, intellectually, that the rules are rules. He has been told this, and he has understood it in the way that one understands something one has been told. The way that understanding exists before experience catches up to it. His body does not yet know it. His body still flinches from the blow, still tenses against the impact of the floor, still operates within the framework of the rules as though they are the rules of the world rather than the rules of a system. He has the information. He does not yet have the transformation that the information, when fully integrated, produces. Morpheus says, between exchanges, things that are both coaching and philosophy, that free his mind is not a metaphor, but a description. That what he is trying to get Neo to do is not to learn new techniques, but to stop believing in the technique as a category. He says that speed and size in the simulation are not what they are in the real world. That in the real world, a larger and faster opponent is a larger and faster opponent, and the difference matters in the ways that it matters. In the simulation, speed and size are the simulation's rendering of speed and size, and the rendering is a rule of the system, and the rule can be worked with differently once it is understood as a rule, rather than as a fact of nature. He says that knowledge is not enough, and does not yet tell Neo what knowledge needs to become, because that is something Neo has to arrive at, rather than something that can be told. The JUMP program is the clearest demonstration of where Neo is at the midpoint of his training. The jump program is a construct of two tall buildings facing each other across a gap, and the task is to jump the gap, to make the leap between the two buildings that no human body can make within the rules of the simulation, but that a person who truly understood the rules as rules could make. Morpheus jumps the gap to show that it can be done. It is an extraordinary thing to watch. The launch from the roof, the silence of the passage, the clean arrival on the other building's edge. And it is also, in the context of what the film has established, completely comprehensible. He jumps the gap because he knows the gap is a rule, not a fact. He knows that the simulation will not kill him for contradicting a rule that he fully understands to be a rule. Neo attempts the jump. He runs at the roof's edge with the specific quality of someone who is almost believing something and who is also aware of the almost. Who can feel the presence of the belief and also feel the presence of the thing that is not quite allowing the belief to be complete. He goes off the roof. He falls. The simulation catches him. The pavement rises to meet him, and the impact is the impact of hitting pavement from a significant height, which is severe. And he lies on the ground of the virtual street below with the quality of someone who has found the precise location of the limit of his current capacity. He almost believed. The almost was the distance between the roof of one building and the pavement below. Back on the ship, after the session, he spits blood. The impact was real in the way that the rule about the mind making it real describes. And Trinity asks about his first time in the jump program. He says he thought it wasn't real. She says that your mind makes it real. He says that means the jump wasn't real. She says that when you're in it, it's real. This is a precise and important exchange that the film passes through quickly, and that contains the most important thing that any character says to Neo outside of what the Oracle says. That the reality of the simulation is not a philosophical problem that can be solved by maintaining the correct theoretical position. It is a practical problem that is encountered in the body, in the moment, in the specific present tense of a person attempting something they do not yet fully believe is possible. The construct through which Tank is able to load knowledge and programs directly to Neo and the crew is the film's most casually extraordinary element. It is mentioned and used without the film spending much time on the implications of it, because the implications are too large to explore in the time available, and because the film trusts the audience to sit with them. The fact that a motor program, the accumulated physical knowledge of decades of practice of a martial art, can be loaded into a person's mind in seconds and immediately available to the body is not a small thing. It changes the relationship between learning and knowledge in a fundamental way. The years that a martial artist spends acquiring the physical knowledge of their practice are not the acquisition of the knowledge itself, but the writing of the knowledge into the body's muscle memory, the gradual integration of technique with reflex, the slow making of the conscious into the automatic. The construct bypasses this process entirely. What Neo has after the loading is technically complete, but experientially untested. He knows Kung Fu the way the simulation knows Kung Fu, as a comprehensive model of all the relevant motor patterns and sequences and responses available to his conscious mind and accessible to his body, but without the specific integration that comes from having used the knowledge in a real encounter with a real opponent who is trying to apply their own knowledge against him. Morpheus tests this in the sparring sequence in the construct. And the testing shows both the power of the loaded knowledge. Neo moves well, moves with actual skill, and its limitation. It is not yet his, not yet adapted to the specific qualities of his body and his instincts, not yet the product of his own process. It is knowledge that belongs to everyone, and therefore to no one in particular. Making it his is the work of the encounters that follow. The woman in the red dress is an interruption in the training in the construct. A sequence Morpheus builds specifically to illustrate a lesson about attention and distraction, and the specific danger of the people inside the simulation who are not what they appear. He populates the training environment with a street crowd and a woman in a red dress who walks among them. And as she walks past Neo, he turns to look at her. And when he turns back to where Morpheus was standing, an agent is standing there with a gun pointed at his head. The lesson is simple and brutal. The simulation is not a neutral environment. It is a managed environment. And the management includes the deliberate provision of things that pull attention away from what is dangerous. The woman in the red dress is not a person. She is not anything. She is a distraction. In the simulation, outside the training environment, anything can be a distraction, and any distraction can be the moment before an agent appears. The Nebuchadnezzar carries its crew through the world below the scorched sky. The real world, the dark world, the world of destroyed cities and machine sentinels and the ongoing war, with the specific quality of a vessel that is both home and active instrument, that the crew inhabits with the practiced ease of people who have been living in it long enough that its confined spaces and its technical demands are part of the ordinary texture of their days. The crew knows each other in the way that people know each other when they have been in close quarters under chronic stress for an extended period, with a completeness that is the completeness of people who have very little privacy from each other and who have developed the specific tolerance and the specific care that shared danger over time produces. Tank is the crew's anchor to the real world. He alone among them has never been in the simulation, has never had the experience of waking from it, has never had to rebuild his sense of what is real from the foundation up. He was born in Zion, which means he was born knowing what the world is, which means he carries the knowledge of the world's true condition not as a revelation or a trauma, but as the simple background fact of his existence. His relationship to the simulation is the relationship of a technician to a system. He understands it thoroughly, he can navigate it and manage it and open doors in it, but he does not inhabit it, and he does not mistake it for reality. He is, among the crew, the most reliably located person, the one who always knows exactly where he is. Morpheus believes in Neo with the quality that the film has been careful to establish as something beyond optimism or strategic hope. It is the specific belief of a person who received a prophecy from a source they trust absolutely and who has oriented their entire existence around the fulfillment of that prophecy, not because this is irrational, but because the oracle has been right enough times and in enough specific ways that the belief is structurally indistinguishable from knowledge. He has been searching for the one for a very long time. He has found other candidates and been disappointed. He has freed other people from the simulation and brought them to the oracle and been told that they were not the one. He has maintained the search through all of these disappointments with the specific quality of a person whose faith is not contingent on evidence because it was not originally founded on evidence. The Oracle told him Neo would come. He found Neo. He has carried this convergence carefully in the months between finding Neo and bringing him here, careful not to force the process, careful not to push Neo toward the belief that needs to arrive in Neo rather than being installed in him from outside. He trains Neo and shows Neo and brings Neo to the Oracle because these are the things that will allow Neo to arrive where he needs to arrive. But he does not try to make Neo believe. He knows that the believing cannot be made. It can only be allowed. When Smith interrogates Morpheus in the building, the interrogation has the specific quality of an encounter between two very different kinds of certainty. Smith is certain in the way of a program designed to enforce a system. He knows what he is, he knows what his function is, he knows what he needs from Morpheus, and what he is willing to do to get it. His certainty is the certainty of design. He is doing exactly what he was made to do, and there is in this doing a particular and unsettling calm. He does not hate Morpheus. He does not enjoy the interrogation. He is executing a function, and the execution of the function is all that matters. Morpheus is certain in a different way, the way of someone who has chosen to believe something that cannot be verified and who has maintained that choice through decades of difficulty, and who is therefore not going to abandon it in an interrogation room. His certainty is the certainty of will rather than the certainty of design. He chose this. He continues to choose it. Smith cannot access the thing he is looking for, the access codes to Zion, because what Smith is trying to break through is not a piece of information that Morpheus is protecting, but a quality of commitment that is not breakable in the way that information protection can be broken. The codes are there in Morpheus's mind. They are accessible. What is protecting them is not a lock, but a person. The betrayal and its aftermath restructure the final act of the film in a way that the opening has been carefully preparing. Cypher's deal with Agent Smith was made in secret over weeks or months of meetings in the simulation, while the rest of the crew was either in the real world or monitored. Smith, who understands human weakness with the cool efficiency of a system designed to exploit it, gave Cypher exactly what Cypher needed. The acknowledgement that what Cypher wanted was not shameful, but comprehensible. That the desire for the comfortable lie was not a failure of character, but a response to an unbearable situation. He validated Cypher's experience, and then he offered him a solution, and Cypher took it. The killing of the crew members in the Nebuchadnezzar is the most brutal sequence the film contains. The specific brutality of people being killed while they are helpless, while they are lying in chairs with their eyes closed and their consciousness in the simulation and their bodies completely without defense. It is done methodically and without drama. Cypher disconnects each line with the specific efficiency of someone completing a task they have decided to complete. And the bodies that were people a moment before are bodies that are people no longer. And the killing of them has the quality of something irreversible being done to the irreplaceable. It is not presented as exciting. It is presented as what it is. Murder, conducted by someone who has decided that the value of the lives he is ending is less than the value of the lie he wants to return to. The dinner that Cypher has with Agent Smith inside the simulation, the meeting that is the film's most private and most revealing scene, the scene where the deal is made, takes place in a restaurant of the kind that the simulation does very well. Warm light, white tablecloths, a wine glass full of something red, the ambient sound of other diners at other tables, living their simulated lives, without the slightest awareness that the man at this particular table is conducting a negotiation that will cost several people their lives. Cypher cuts a piece of steak. He brings it to his mouth. He chews. He knows the steak is not real. He knows it is code. He knows that the sensations of taste and texture and warmth and richness that the steak produces in his experience is not the sensation of actual meat, but the simulation's rendering of the sensation of actual meat, indistinguishable from the real thing in every way that the experience of a thing can be distinguished from the thing itself. He says that ignorance is bliss. He does not say it as a complaint or a confession, but as a considered position, as the conclusion of a long argument he has been having with himself about the relative value of truth and comfort, an argument that has resolved for Cypher in favor of comfort. He has been in the real world long enough. He has eaten the gray paste and slept on the hard floor and watched the crew of the Nebuchadnezzar and the other freed humans of Zion maintain their commitment to the truth of things, and he has found that he does not share this commitment in the degree that the life requires. He wants to go back. He wants to go back and not know he is going back, wants to be reinserted with a new identity and no memory of having been freed, wants to wake in the simulation and believe what the simulation tells him and find the steak real and the wine real and the restaurant real, and spend the rest of his life in the beautiful lie without the knowledge that it is a lie to make it ugly. Smith listens to this with the expression of someone who is hearing what they expected to hear. The specific expression of a being who understands human psychology sufficiently well to have predicted this conversation and who is now simply confirming the prediction. He does not offer Cypher warmth or sympathy. He offers him the deal, and the deal is what Cypher asked for. Reinsertion, a comfortable life, no memory. He says he wants to be someone important. He says, with the specific quality of a fantasy detailed enough to reveal its emotional core, that he wants to be an actor. He wants to be famous. He wants the dream to be not only comfortable, but exceptional. Wants not just to be back in the simulation, but to be back in it in a version that is better than the one he left. Smith says he will take care of it. The exchange of the handshake across the table, the man in the dark coat and the man in the gray suit, the freed human and the machine program, making an agreement over steak in a restaurant that doesn't exist, is the film's most precise image of the specific transaction at the heart of the simulation's design. The simulation was built to be chosen over reality. Its entire function is to be preferable to the truth. Cypher is not a failure of the freed human project. He is evidence that the project is fighting against something genuinely powerful, genuinely appealing, genuinely difficult to refuse. The simulation is very good. Smith knows it. Cypher knows it. The steak is everything the steak should be. Trinity's first full scene, the hotel room, the escape, the phone booth, establishes the film's terms for her before they are established for Neo. And this establishment is important because it provides the benchmark against which Neo's development will be measured. Trinity can already do what Neo is learning to do. She moves through the hotel's space with the specific quality that the film will spend most of its running time building Neo toward. The quality of someone for whom the simulation's rules are rules rather than walls, who operates within the code with the full awareness of its nature. Her fight with the police officers in the hotel room is not spectacular in the way of film action that is primarily about visual effect. It is spectacular in the way of something that should be impossible, being done with complete precision and complete economy, without waste, without display. The rooftop escape and the phone booth are the clearest statement of what it means to move through the simulation as a freed person. She moves through the space of the city, across rooftops, through a window, down a fire escape, through the streets, with the quality of someone reading the environment as code, and finding in the code the path that the simulation's rules make available to someone who understands them as rules rather than as the limits of the possible. And then the phone booth, which is an exit, a point in the code where the connection between the simulation and the Nebuchadnezzar runs in both directions, where the transfer of consciousness from simulation to real world can be accomplished by the act of answering the phone. She answers it, and she is gone, and the agents arrive at an empty booth. What Trinity's opening sequence does for the film's emotional structure is establish the question of relationship between Neo and the world he is about to encounter, not through Neo's perspective, but through an outside perspective, through showing us, before we meet Neo, what the world he does not yet know about looks like in its most fully realized form, in the movement of a person who already understands it completely. We see the destination before we see the journey. We see what Neo is going to become before we see where he starts. And this gives the film a specific quality throughout its development of Neo. The quality of watching someone approach a thing we have already seen. Watching the gap between where they are and where they are going narrow across the film's running time. The city that the simulation renders is the city of 1999. Specific enough to be recognizable as a real place and real time, generic enough to be any large American city, with the visual density and the specific light and the specific texture of a metropolis rendered in exhaustive detail. The detail is the point. The simulation is convincing in the way that only something designed from the ground up with the specific purpose of being convincing can be convincing. Every surface, every crowd, every shift of light and texture and ambient sound contributing to the total effect of a world that presents itself as real because it was built with nothing else in mind. And the detail is the deception. The detail is what makes the choice between the red pill and the blue pill not a simple choice between a pleasant lie and an unpleasant truth, but a genuinely difficult choice between a rich and internally consistent world that is false and a real world that is dark and cold and at war. When the agents move through this detailed world, when Smith and the other agents walk through the lobby of a building or stand in a street or sit across from Anderson in an interrogation room, their presence in the simulation has a specific quality that the film's visual design captures with precision. They fit. They look like they belong because they were designed to look like they belong, because the simulation designed them to look like the kind of authority that the simulation's inhabitants would recognize and defer to without question. But they also, when you look at them with the attention that the film invites, carry a quality that is not quite right. A too perfect stillness, a quality of inhabiting the body they are wearing rather than being born into it, a precision of movement and response that has the character of efficiency rather than the character of a person moving through the world they grew up in. They are very good at looking human. They are not human. The difference is there if you are looking for it. The Oracle's apartment functions in the film as the simulation's most counterintuitive space. Not a place of power or mystery. Not a space designed to produce the specific awe that a prophetic authority ought to command, but a kitchen with cookies and a radio playing and children in the next room and an ordinary woman in an apron who has seen everything and found in the seeing of everything that what the moment requires is almost always a cup of tea and a direct conversation. Her authority derives entirely from her track record, from the accumulated correctness of what she has said over the years, which the freed humans of Zion have learned to extend the same practical trust to that they would extend to a doctor, whose diagnoses have consistently proven accurate. She does not claim the authority of prophecy or of mystical access to the future. She claims the authority of knowing, and the knowing has proven reliable. And reliability is the most durable foundation for trust that the film's world contains. The agents have Morpheus in a room in the building, and they are doing what agents do when they have someone they want information from, applying the specific pressure of beings who can use the simulation's code to do things to a body that ordinary interrogators cannot do, who can access the nervous system directly through the simulation and produce in the person being interrogated whatever they need to produce. What they want from Morpheus is the access codes to Zion, the codes that would allow the machines to find the last human city and destroy it, which is the final step in the extinction of free humanity that the war has been pursuing. Morpheus knows the codes. Morpheus has not given them up. He will not give them up for as long as his mind holds. But the agents are not working on his will. They are working on his nervous system. And the nervous system is not the same thing as the will. Tank is on the Nebuchadnezzar. Trinity and Neo are the only crew members who can be plugged in and sent back. Trinity says they need to get Morpheus out. She says this with the flat certainty of someone who has already done the calculation and who is not asking for agreement, but for participation. Neo says he is going back in. Trinity says that is suicide. Neo says that he knows that Morpheus sacrificed himself so that Neo could get out, that the Oracle told him what would happen, and that this changes what he is able to do and not do. He says something that the film has been building toward, that he knows he is not the one the Oracle told him, but that what he also knows is that Morpheus believed absolutely, and that this belief cannot be simply discarded. He goes back in. This is the moment when the film's central question about belief and knowledge begins its final movement. Neo is acting on incomplete information. He does not know he is the one, has been told he is not, and is choosing to act as though the question matters less than the action that the situation requires. He is acting on something that is not knowledge and is not quite faith, but that is closer to faith than it is to knowledge. The choice to behave as though the thing you cannot verify is true, because the behavior the truth would require is the behavior the situation needs. They go back in. They go in dressed for what they are about to do, which is to enter a building that is heavily guarded by agents of the simulation in both their human-looking and their truer forms, to find Morpheus, to get him out through an exit phone before the agents can stop them, or before the machines find the Nebuchadnezzar and kill the crew in the real world. They go in with guns. A great many guns. Tank loads them into the construct and the guns appear, and they take as many as they can carry, and the specific imagery of the lobby sequence, The two of them walking into the building's security checkpoint in long coats with everything they are carrying underneath, is the film's most purely cinematic sequence. The moment where the action vocabulary that the film has been building throughout becomes fully available. The lobby. The guards at the checkpoint tell them they cannot bring weapons into the building. Trinity and Neo look at them. The guards reach for their weapons. The sequence that follows is the film's most sustained and choreographed physical sequence. Guns and movement and the specific architecture of an action scene designed to be both technically extraordinary and symbolically legible, in which the ordinary rules of what a human body can do are visible as rules being broken, rather than as special effects being applied. They move through the guards with the economy of people who know what they are doing and who are not interested in doing more of it than the situation requires. They go to the elevator. They go up. The building is full of soldiers. Actual military response to the agent's request for backup. Men with guns and training who are not part of the simulation's management, but who are doing what soldiers do when they are ordered to hold a position. Neo and Trinity move through these floors with the same quality of movement. Effective, clear-eyed, focused on the objective. And the movement through the building has a quality of demonstration in it. Each floor is an opportunity for the film to show in the clearest possible terms what someone who understands the rules of the simulation is capable of within it. Neo is not fully the One yet. He is not yet doing the things that the One can do, but he is moving toward the thing he needs to be, one floor at a time. The roof. Agents on the roof. Trinity and Neo come up through the roof access, and the agents are there, and the gap between fighting police officers and fighting agents becomes fully visible. The officers can be fought with physical skill. The agents cannot be fought to the same way because the agents are not limited by the physical rules that even the most skilled human operates within. They can move faster than the eye tracks. They can dodge bullets. They can sustain damage that would end a human being and continue functioning. Neo fights an agent, and the fight is not a victory. It is a survival, an escape, which is what fighting an agent looks like at this stage of Neo's development. They get Morpheus to a rooftop helicopter. Trinity flies. She had Tank load the pilot's program into her before they went in, so she knows how to fly the helicopter the way Neo knows Kung Fu, as information loaded directly into the brain, available without practice. The helicopter lifts off. They swing back toward the building to collect Morpheus, who has jumped from the roof. Neo hangs from the helicopter on a cable and catches him. The agent who was pursuing Morpheus empties a weapon into the helicopter from the building's facade, and Neo is blocking bullets. 1, 2, 3, leaning into the arc of them, and deflecting them with the precise, impossible movement of someone operating at a speed the weapon cannot keep up with. They get to the ground. They get to an exit phone. Morpheus goes through. Trinity goes through. Agent Smith shoots Neo in the chest before he can reach the phone, and Neo goes down, and on the Nebuchadnezzar tank is watching the monitors that show Neo's vital signs, and the vital signs go flat. Trinity is in the real world next to the chair where Neo's body is, and she is speaking to him through the jack connection. Speaking to him in the simulation where his consciousness still is, even as his body is dying in the real world. And what she says is the film's most direct statement about love, and what love is capable of doing within the film's metaphysical framework. She says that the Oracle told her something that she did not believe, and that she has been carrying since the Oracle said it. The Oracle told her that she would fall in love with the One. She says to Neo's simulation body, lying on the ground of the building's corridor, with Agent Smith standing over it, that she cannot be in love with someone who does not exist, and that therefore he has to be the one. Because the alternative is that she is in love with no one, and the Oracle was wrong, and the Oracle is not wrong. She says that he cannot be dead. She tells him to get up. Neo gets up. He does not get up the way people get up after being shot. He gets up the way things get up when the rules that applied to them a moment ago do not apply to them anymore. He rises from the floor with the specific quality of someone who has passed through something and arrived on the other side of it in a different condition. He looks at Agent Smith and the agents and the corridor of the building, and what he sees when he looks is different from what he was seeing before he was shot. He sees the code. He sees the simulation as what it is, as running code, as language, as the text that the opening of the film showed falling in green columns. And what he sees when he sees Agent Smith is an assembly of code, a program running in a system, bound by the constraints of the system, in ways that he now understands from the inside out, rather than from the outside and in. He stops a volley of bullets in the air. He stops them with his hand extended and his face changed. Not the face of someone performing a feat, but of someone for whom the feat is simply the expression of something they understand. The way understanding something makes you capable of things you could not do before the understanding. He fights Agent Smith, and it is not the fight that the roof was. On the roof, he was trying to match an agent within the rules that agents operate outside. Now he is operating outside those rules himself, moving through them rather than within them, treating the code that the agent is as something he can read and engage with directly, rather than as an opponent who exceeds him. Smith, fighting something that is not what he was designed to fight, becomes increasingly frantic, more violent, more committed, more desperate to land something that registers in a way that things have always registered in him. Nothing registers. Neo reaches into him, literally, his hand going into the code structure of the agent's body. And Smith's program cannot contain what is being done to it. The agent explodes outward and is gone. And the other agents, who feel what has happened to Smith, run. Neo is standing in the corridor of a building that does not exist in a city, that does not exist in a world, and that is a dream drawn across the sleeping minds of people in pods. And he has just dismantled a program that the simulation uses to maintain itself, and the simulation knows it. He flies. He goes up through the ceiling and out through the building's roof into the sky of the simulation, and up through the sky, and the sequence of his rising is the film's final image of him. Arms out, accelerating upward into the blue above the city, leaving behind the ground and the buildings and the streets and the specific gravity of the rules he has been operating within for his entire life. And then the film ends as it began, with code, with the green text falling on the black screen, with the layer of reality beneath what the eye sees. A voice speaks. Neo's voice. Now, not the narrator from elsewhere, but Neo himself. And what he says is addressed to the machines, and to the system, and to the people still sleeping in the pods who have not yet been freed. He says that he is going to show them a world without rules and boundaries, a world where anything is possible. The phone goes down. He goes up. The screen goes to credits. Now that the story has gently unfolded, It can be interesting to reflect on some of the ideas behind the film and what it was reaching toward in its long and patient telling. The Matrix is, at its most fundamental level, a film about the relationship between reality and perception, about what it means to live in a world, and how you know whether the world you are living in is the one that is actually there. This is a question that philosophy has been examining for a very long time, and the film engages with it not as an academic exercise, but as a story, translating the abstract problem of whether the world is as it appears into the specific and concrete experience of a person who discovers that the world he has been living in is not as it appears at all. The question is old. The feeling of the question, embodied in Neo's specific experience of waking up in the pod, in the moment when the simulation begins to fail and the mirror liquefies onto his arm, is new in the way that a good story makes an old question new. The simulation and the real world function in the film as two registers of the same philosophical investigation. The simulation is comfortable and populated and detailed and internally consistent. It is, by any ordinary standard of assessment, entirely convincing as a reality, which is, of course, the point. The real world is dark and cold and broken, and populated by people living on hard floors and eating gray paste and fighting a war they are losing. The film does not present the choice between these two realities as an easy one, and Cypher's decision to choose the simulation is not presented as simple cowardice or moral failure. It is presented as the response of a human being to the specific and unrelenting difficulty of the truth, which is often worse than the lie it replaces. This is one of the film's most honest qualities. Its acknowledgement that the red pill is a hard thing to have swallowed. The world that the freed humans inhabit is genuinely worse in most measurable ways than the simulation from which they have been freed. It is colder and darker and more dangerous, and the food is terrible. The freedom it offers is real. The freedom of people who know what is true about their situation, who are not deceived, who act in the world on the basis of accurate information. But freedom of this kind is not comfort, and the film does not pretend it is. Cypher's speech about the stake, about wanting the stake to be real, knowing it is not real, choosing to want it anyway, is the film's most honest acknowledgement of the cost of consciousness, of knowing, of seeing things as they are. Neo's journey is structured as a classic hero's journey in its broad architecture, but with a specific and modern twist at its center. The hero's primary obstacle is not external, but epistemic. He does not need to acquire a weapon or a skill or an ally in the way that traditional heroes do. He needs to believe something. Specifically, to believe something about himself that cannot be verified from the outside, that cannot be confirmed by any authority, that depends entirely on his own internal relationship to what he knows and what he trusts. The Oracle's role in this structure is the film's most philosophically interesting element. She is an oracle who tells him he is not the one, and he becomes the one. The apparent contradiction resolves in the understanding that she told him what she knew he needed to hear in order to arrive at the transformation that the hero's journey requires. She did not lie. She told him the truth about where he was. Where he was not where he needed to end up. The question of free will and determinism that the vase scene raises, that moment when the oracle mentions the vase and Neo looks at it and knocks it over, is the film's most compact and most careful philosophical statement. If the oracle can see what is going to happen, does that mean it is determined to happen? If it is determined to happen, in what sense does Neo have a choice about anything? If he does not have a choice, in what sense is his becoming the one an achievement rather than a mechanical outcome? The film raises this question through the broken vase and does not answer it, because the answer to it is genuinely uncertain, and the film is honest about this. What it suggests through the structure of the story, rather than through any explicit argument, is that the distinction between free will and determination may be less important than the quality of the engagement. That what matters is not whether the outcome was inevitable, but whether Neo showed up for it with the full force of his own choice. Morpheus is the film's figure of absolute belief, the person who has organized his entire life around a conviction that cannot yet be verified, and who extends to that conviction a commitment that exceeds what ordinary pragmatism would warrant. He believes in Neo the way that people believe in things that have been given to them by an authority they trust. The oracle told him, and that the one would come, and he has taken this at full value and has been acting on it for years. And the acting on it has shaped everything about how he lives and what he does. His belief is the thing that makes Neo's liberation possible. It is Morpheus who found Neo, who freed him, who brought him to the oracle, who built the framework within which Neo's transformation could occur. Without the belief, none of this exists. But the film is careful not to make Morpheus's belief simply correct in the straightforward sense. The oracle told Neo he was not the one, and the film holds this alongside Morpheus's absolute conviction without resolving the tension neatly. What it suggests is that belief itself is a form of causation, that Morpheus's belief in Neo contributed to Neo's becoming what Morpheus believed him to be. Not because belief has magical properties, but because the framework that belief creates is the framework within which the transformation happens. Neo would not have become the one without someone believing he was the one. The belief is not a passive prediction. It is an active participation in the outcome it describes. Agent Smith is the film's most complex antagonist because he is not simply the enemy of the heroes in the conventional sense. He is an expression of the film's most uncomfortable argument about the nature of the world. In the interview scene in the Metacortex building, Smith describes the first version of the Matrix, a perfect world without suffering or conflict, a world that was designed to produce human happiness, and says that it was a catastrophic failure. Human beings rejected it. The unconscious mind, Smith says, defines reality through suffering and misery. A world without those things was unrecognizable as real to the humans it was designed to contain. They rejected it. They died in it, and the machines had to design a world that contained what human beings needed reality to contain: conflict, failure, pain, the whole texture of a life that is difficult and therefore legible. This is a devastating thing to put in the mouth of the film's primary villain, and the film knows it. It is designed to disturb, to raise the possibility that human beings are constituted in ways that make the comfortable fiction less comfortable than the uncomfortable truth. That what we call reality, we recognize partly by its capacity to hurt us. Smith's contempt for humanity is real, and it is specific. He calls it a plague, a virus, a species that consumes everything and moves on. And the comparison is not entirely without foundation within the film's world. But the contempt also reveals Smith's limitation. He can analyze the human being from the outside, can catalog its behavior with cold accuracy, and cannot understand from the inside what the human being experiences as meaningful. He sees the suffering. He does not understand what the suffering is for. The agents function in the film as the most visible expression of the simulation's self-maintenance. The programs designed to protect the system from the people who would disrupt it. Their human appearance is their most effective tool and their most fundamental deception. They look like what they are not, like people, like government agents of a recognizable kind, and this appearance makes them legible within the simulation's social structure. People cooperate with agents because agents look like the kind of authority that people are conditioned to cooperate with. This is the simulation's deepest mechanism, not the virtual reality itself, which is technically impressive, but ultimately just a rendering environment. But the social and psychological structures within the rendering that make the people inside it behave in ways that maintain the system. The red pill and the blue pill are the film's central symbol, and they have long since escaped the film's specific context and entered the general vocabulary of the culture, which is itself evidence of the symbol's precision. It names something that people recognize from their own experience. The choice between comfortable ignorance and uncomfortable knowledge in terms that are concrete enough to be graspable and abstract enough to apply to many different specific situations. The film is careful not to make the choice simple. The blue pill is not simply cowardice, and the red pill is not simply heroism. The blue pill is the continuation of the ordinary life, and the ordinary life, even lived in the simulation, contains things of value, connection, comfort, the specific quality of a world that is familiar and internally consistent. The red pill costs all of this in exchange for the truth. And the truth is a dark ship and gray food and a war for the survival of the species. What Neo discovers when he takes the red pill is not just a fact about the world, but a fact about himself. That he was already, before the pill, someone who could not accept the world as it appeared to be, who was unable to stop asking the question that the world wanted him not to ask, who had organized 2 complete lives around the restlessness that the question produced. The pill does not create a new person. It reveals the person who was already there, the person who was going to have to make this choice sooner or later, the person for whom the comfortable fiction was always inadequate. The specific inadequacy of the simulation for Neo is not that it is uncomfortable. It is comfortable. It has the apartment and the job and the ordinary life. But that it is not sufficient. That something in him could always feel the presence of the framework he was inside. That the question, what is the Matrix, was not a question he could put down. Trinity's role in the film is most fully understood, not as the love interest in a conventional narrative sense, but as the person whose knowledge of Neo, whose specific particular knowledge of this specific particular person, is what provides the final catalyst for his transformation. She does not love a concept or a prophecy. She loves Neo, the person, and it is the specificity of this love that makes the thing she says to him in the corridor work. She is not invoking a general principle about the one. She is telling him what she knows about him, which is more than she knows about the prophecy, and which is more useful to him in the moment of his dying than anything the prophecy contains. The film's visual language, the particular green of the code, the specific palette of blue-gray for the real world, and warm amber for the simulation, the bullet time effect that allows the camera to move around objects in apparent slow motion, while the world within the shot is frozen in action, is worth acknowledging because it is not decorative. The visual language is the philosophical argument made sensory. The code is the truth beneath the surface of things, visible to those who have been freed. The blue-gray real world is the truth's specific quality, cold and hard, and without the comfort that comes from not knowing. The amber warmth of the simulation is the quality of the comfortable deception. The bullet time effect is the visualization of what it looks like to operate inside a system of rules from a position that understands the rules as rules. The camera moves around the paused action because the camera represents a perspective that is outside the rules being paused, that can circulate freely while what is inside the rules is held in place. The film is a love story, and a war story, and a philosophical investigation, and an action film, and these things are not in tension with each other in the Matrix, in the way that they sometimes are in films that attempt too many registers simultaneously. They are unified by the central premise that the world is a simulation, that the simulation can be operated within in ways that exceed its ordinary rules once the rules are understood as rules, which gives every element of the story access to the same basic question. The love story asks, what does it mean to love someone who exists within a simulation? The war story asks, what does it mean to fight for the freedom of beings who are content in their captivity? The philosophy asks, what is real? The action asks, what can a body do when it understands that the constraints on what a body can do are not the constraints of reality, but the constraints of a system? And so the story of the Matrix leaves us with a quiet and persistent question. The question that the film has been asking from its opening frames of falling green code, about the nature of the world we inhabit and our relationship to the systems that structure it. Neo flies up through the sky of the simulation at the end of the film, and the sky is beautiful and entirely unreal, and from above the simulation, it looks exactly like what it is, a rendering environment, a picture drawn across the experience of sleeping minds, maintained by the continuous running of a system that predates and outlasts any individual life within it. He rises above it, and what he has to offer the people still inside it is not the comfort of the simulation, but the discomfort of the truth and the freedom that the discomfort, once accepted, provides. The code falls, the screen goes dark. Rest well.